The CW Chronicles. Sinners. Written by Silvano Williams. All content copyright 2013-2023. All rights reserved. Chapter 9. The Forgotten Ships. I kicked my flight consoles in a frenzy of frustration to get my weapons systems back online. I even rebooted the system. My shuttle wanted to give up on me, and told me so with incredibly annoying loud warnings and beeps. Everything inside my cockpit flashed red, but the real problem was the infinite wall of Space Armada ships that had appeared out of quantum space right behind the command center. They were the ones responsible for the destruction of the Zacharine outpost, and until that very moment, I had forgotten all about them. We had just been fighting the bait. Commander Sandworm had done his best to minimize casualties. He strategized and led the offensive, even using the command center as a shield, which was gigantic and clumsy, but had defenses that were able to stand up to the Space Armada's weapons. A handful more DP officers showed up, finally arriving from the furthest reaches of the cosmos, only to be destroyed almost at once by the surprise assault. We just couldn't match the new numbers of the Space Armada and their orchestrated onslaught.
"We are being surrounded,"
said the commander when the Space Armada reinforcements appeared.
"Initiate a full offensive on the Armada behind us. Do not allow them to destroy the rescue transports."
We all acted at once upon his orders, and quickly succeeded in taking out the first wave of Armada ships that flew down toward the planet to attack the transports. It had been so easy it made me cocky. I went into the fight without any regard for my own safety. I was reckless and made myself an easy target. Our previous tactic of baiting their attention with a ship or two, and then attacking them from the flank with another group, did not work. We even attempted to kite them, which was to draw out a small group of them away from the main fleet and attack them individually, since we had the superior skill, but as soon as we blew up one of them, 10 counterattacked us, almost using our same tactics against us. My shuttle was targeted, and was hit too many times the second time we tried to stop the Space Armada from going down to the planet. They had gotten the best of me, and my ship's defenses had finally given up. The emotion of trying to win the moment overtook me. And with it, many of the officers that followed me. I had failed them and CW. We couldn't stop the onslaught from the Space Armada, and 3 of the rescue transports were destroyed. Regardless, I had no time for regrets. 1 transport remained, and CW was down there with it. I was determined to help him no matter what. I'd fly down there myself and fill up our own ship with as many of those little froggies as I could if I had to. "Come on, you quitter," I yelled at it. "Give me some juice. We have to save them." The shuttle would have none of it, though.
Warning, hull integrity has been compromised. System failure is imminent.
Its sensors replied to me. "Oh," I said with a sudden feeling of eerie calm. "That is not good." My ship had stalled right at the edge of the planet's gravity field, floating in low orbit, the damage so severe, many Space Armada enemies flew by and ignored me for better prey.
Warning, system failure is imminent.
The ship repeated. "Yes," I said, annoyed. "You said that already." I jumped over my seat to the back of the cockpit. The hull groaned and cracked to demonstrate its desire to kill me. Half of the monitors lost power and disappeared. I scurried through one of the compartments behind the cockpit and pulled out a spacesuit from within it. As I threw the suit pieces on the floor to separate them, the gravity generator failed. My feet immediately left the ground, and I began to float away from my spacesuit. Then I saw the rapidly expanding crack that wanted to split the shuttle's hull in 2. The remaining monitors that were still on flashed red with the warning sign. The spacesuit pieces started to scatter around me, which made it increasingly difficult to put them on. The boots went one way, the gloves another. I ended up upside down when I finally put the pants on. The interior of the ship shook violently as the crack expanded more and was about to meet itself at the other end. I hurriedly put on the boots, the jacket, and the gloves. Everything snapped into place magnetically, which was fantastic and helped me get them on quickly. I had managed to put the entire suit on, except for the helmet, just before the crack finished its journey across the hull. The floor was above me or I was upside down. It was hard to tell which way was which. Anyway, the ship had finally cracked open like an egg, and the cabin rapidly depressurized through the hairline fracture. When I tried to put the helmet on, I couldn't bring it down to lock it in place, only covering about half of my head. The sudden change of pressure popped my ears, and I felt like a bucket of ice had been dropped over my head. I grimaced in pain but held onto the helmet tighter, interlocking my fingers on top of it and wrapping my forearms around it. The vacuum of space sucked the air out of the ship and pulled on the helmet, almost ripping it from my grip. When it hit the crack in the hull, the impact was the final push the shuttle needed to break apart. I was able to jam my head into the helmet in that split second, as my head pushed up on it and through the crack. The shuttle splintered in half, as if I had been traveling at 100 miles per hour. The helmet automatically locked in place and pressurized my head just in time. Luckily, I was able to hook my right foot on the shuttle's front chassis before I passed out and was tossed into space.
Can you hear me, Vlad?
I heard Ilona call out through the suit's built-in communicator. I'm okay, I panted, quickly regaining my senses. Well, putting aside the fact that after all our efforts, I almost ended up getting killed by the vacuum of space, had popsicle hair, and now held on for dear life on a useless broken spacecraft surrounded by murderous space zombies. It was not my intent to lie to her, but I was conscious and still mobile, and that is all that mattered. I just need to get down there and help CW, I grunted and pulled myself back inside the ship's remains. With the cabin now fully depressurized, it was easy to float myself back into the cockpit seats. Some of the consoles still flickered with power. There's some life left in her, Ilona, I yelled out excitedly. Worried, she replied.
Oh God, Vlad. We'll send someone to rescue you as soon as possible.
I'm sure I can salvage something out of this. Don't worry about me, I said confidently and kicked one of the cockpit consoles open. Concentrate on CW's rescue plan, please. I studied the console's innards. It was a maze of wires and circuits. I had no idea how I was going to fix this thing, but got right down to business regardless. There was no choice but to figure it out. Down on the planet, CW stood up from the destruction, his DP uniform smoldering from the explosions. Without wasting time on concerns for himself, he checked on the froggies underneath him, but they lay motionless, piled on top of each other.
No.
CW cried in anguish, but suddenly there was movement. CW wiped the tears from his face and opened his eyes wide, filled with fragile hope. He carefully moved the small charred bodies aside. Underneath them, a solitary survivor moaned. It was the froggy with the broken arm. CW picked it up and cradled it in his arms.
You will be okay.
He whispered to it.
I am so sorry, but I promise you will be okay.
CW stood up with the froggy resting on his forearm, as if he was holding a newborn. The froggy lay securely tucked against CW's chest. First Officer Quanch, the pilot from the remaining rescue transport, climbed down from it and ran out to meet CW. They both looked up to watch the Space Armada ships fly away from them.
Captain,
Quanch called out.
Get in, quickly. I'm not sure how close I can get to the reversed magnetic pulse, but anything is better than here. We can pick up more of them on an island closer to the mainland.
CW quickly agreed, and they both entered the transport. CW placed the hurt froggy on a cargo net just behind the cockpit, and leaned over Quanch's shoulder as the pilot took the transport into the air.
Thank you,
CW said to him, his voice full of gratitude. Quanch looked at CW and nodded. He then turned to the monitors and called out.
Commander.
The commander appeared on one of the screens. Quanch reported at once.
The Space Armada destroyed the other 3 rescue transports. We suffered a severe loss of native life.
CW then questioned.
What is our status to undo villains' mind control on our officers?
The commander looked like he was attempting to collect himself. He seemed fatigued. CW then heard Ilona worriedly yell out my name in the background chatter.
Commander.
CW prodded. Quanch looked away from the commander's monitor. Instead, he concentrated on piloting through the hurricane winds and around the dangerous water vortexes that surrounded them, since he already knew the answer.
Captain,
The commander half-heartedly replied.
I am sending an escort squad for the remaining transport. Things are grim here. Load as many of the natives as you can fit into that ship and get out.
But sir, that will not be enough.
CW protested.
I have called for every dimension police officer to assist us.
The commander said.
Most are already here. We underestimated Villain's space armada. Captain, we've lost the fight. If we remain here much longer, we will lose everything else.
CW did not understand the meaning of it. All he knew was that the Dimension Police could not give up on saving lives. He could never surrender.
Commander.
CW said.
We can fit some of the natives in my shuttle.
The commander froze for a moment, realizing CW could not understand the precarious situation they were dealing with.
Captain,
The commander said carefully.
Vlad is still alive.
CW looked at him, confused.
But your ship has been destroyed.
He continued without giving CW a chance to respond.
Most of the Dimension Police space fleet has been destroyed.
The rescue transport shook due to turbulence. The monitors and controls flashed with static.
Captain,
Officer Quanch interrupted.
this is as close as I can get to the mainland. The reversed magnetic pulse is affecting my controls.
Quanch pointed to a small island underneath them.
We are about a quarter of a mile away. I can land there and wait for you.
CW acknowledged him, then turned his attention back to the commander's monitor.
We will load this cargo transport and help you afterward.
CW said, steadfast in his resolution to save everyone.
We will not let Villain get away with this.
The commander was not as optimistic.
Do what you must, Captain. But please hurry, or we will all die here today. Between the space armada and the planet's instability, your time there has already run out.
Somehow, this only served to renew CW's resolve.
If there is life left on this planet,
He said.
I will not stop until it is safe. Send us the escort and we will rescue them.
CW noticed a DP ship flying down toward the transport on one of the monitors. His reaction was to smile at the prospect of the reinforcement on its way to help them. His smile quickly faded when he realized the vessel screeching toward them through the stormy sky was not one of our Dimension Police friends. It was one of the stolen ships. CW grabbed Quanch by the scruff of his uniform and yanked him out of his seat as he snatched the injured Froggy with his other hand. He then kicked the transport's cargo door open and jumped out of it with the Froggy and Quanch in his strong embrace, just in time before the cargo ship exploded from the surprise attack. On his way down, CW finally noticed the many destroyed Dimension Police and Space Armada spacecraft falling from the sky above the mainland. Now that the fight had moved into the planet's atmosphere, the planet looked like a snow globe of carnage and destruction. CW landed feet first on the island below. Once again, his sturdy legs absorbed the impact, providing his passengers with a soft landing. The remains of the transport crashed all around them. CW instinctively protected the pilot and the Froggy in his arms from the debris of the wreckage. Even before CW was able to stand fully upright from his protective stance, the ship that attacked them had flown down and hovered near him. CW looked at it in dismay, observing the desecrated DP markings on it. He carefully placed Quanch and the Froggy down behind himself to protect them as he turned to face the hovering ship.
Why would you want to cause so much pain?
CW pleaded, his voice easily heard over the wind and the engine roar.
Why have you destroyed all this life? You were once a Dimension Police officer sworn to protect it.
The fighter ship's cockpit opened, revealing Villain sitting inside.
Villain?
CW took a step back in shocked surprise.
What? What have you to gain from this destruction? This devastation? This massacre against innocent, defenseless lives?
Villain jumped out of his fighter. He landed in front of CW with a commanding crunch of the earth below them, doing more damage to the ground than CW had after falling a much greater distance. Villain had landed so close to CW that his red-piercing goggles were inches away from CW's own deep blue eyes.
Because
Villain answered with his booming voice.
I wanted to show you our birthplace. You must have forgotten this was the wrong turn destiny took to create us. I'm here to remind you.
He turned away from CW and placed one hand on his hovering ship as if petting it.
Trivial matters for gods like us, I know.
Villain said calmly. Then he turned to face CW again and with lightning-fast speed punched him squarely on the nose. The impact of Villain's fist on CW's face was so powerful the sound clapped and echoed throughout the planet. CW flipped back over Quanch and the Froggy. He crashed behind them, hitting the ground with such force the surface of the planet cratered. Mud splashed all over the Froggy and Quanch like a small tidal wave. Villain moved out of the way of the splatter of mud with incredible speed. He then reached over to grab the Froggy, but Quanch reacted quickly to protect it. He cradled the Froggy and leapt sideways away from Villain's grasp. Villain, not amused, slowly and deliberately straightened up and looked up at the sky. Over a dozen Space Armada fighters zoomed down below the clouds and flew in circles above them like hungry vultures. Two of them lost control because of the reversed magnetic pulse's effect and crashed into the sea.
Pick one,
Villain said dryly to a stunned CW.
What?
CW groaned and stood on one knee out of the crater. Villain walked up to CW, ignoring Quanch, and bent down to speak to CW's face. His voice was filled with rage this time.
Pick one,
he bellowed. CW looked at Quanch. A calming comfort emanated from CW's eyes. First Officer Quanch nodded at him in acknowledgement. Then CW lowered his gaze to the injured Froggy in the officer's embrace.
No,
he answered forcefully. Villain reached over to Quanch with blinding speed, and this time snatched the Froggy from his arms before the pilot could even react. Then he held the Froggy carelessly by the back of the head. The unconscious Froggy dangled in his grip, undoubtedly oblivious to where it was. Just as CW was thinking about taking the Froggy back from Villain's grasp, the Space Armada fighters dove down and shot at all of them. CW turned to use his supernatural speed to cover Quanch from the attack, but Villain stopped him by grabbing CW by the ankle and slamming him against the ground away from them all. Quanch stood bravely and did not cower from the rain of plasma bolts coming down at them. CW wriggled with his mighty force to free himself from Villain's grip, to no avail. Instead, he felt every impact from the volley of shots. Every plasma bolt that hit him seemed to weaken him. Villain, unlike CW, was unaffected. It was as if his skin absorbed the energy and fire from the plasma bolts. He even kept the Froggy from harm, as he lifted and slammed CW back against the ground without much effort. Villain felt no pain and showed no discomfort. First Officer Quanch was not as fortunate. He turned to ash, his charred body encrusted into the crystallized ground.